Kathleen. Hey, Kathleen, thank you so much for holding. What's on your mind tonight?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I called. I kind of got prodded by some members of the Atheist Community of Austin to call in.
Okay, great.
Well, thank you so much.
I'm like the neighborhood Christian transsexual, and I don't know. They thought this would be a good place for me to call in and maybe talk about Christian sexuality with you guys from a positive standpoint, and maybe as opposed to an evangelical bashing standpoint.
Sure. I mean, did you have a particular question for us or anything in particular that you wanted to make sure to share?
Well, I mean, there was the caller before was talking about, that sex and fundamentalism and kink don't very well mix together, I think was kind of the essence of what he's saying. And I'm sure you've had people call in before and maybe bash what you guys are doing. I mean, I'm looking at the screen right now and there's, dildos and paddles and everything all over the place. And, of course, I'm a big fan of all that. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know. I wasn't sure. I didn't really call in with anything to talk about. Other than to say, there are Christians out there mm-hmm. that are, LGBT, that are smart enough to realize that the evangelical kind of power thing that is over sex is unhealthy. It's not Christian. Sex is supposed to be healthy.
Well, sure, but let me just interrupt you very briefly. We tend not to debate much on this show just because of the trauma that folks have generally experienced within the queer community and related to sex. So with a sensitivity towards that, I would only suggest that when you say something is not Christian, that's a very tricky thing to define because Christianity is a big umbrella that a lot of people say a lot of different things about. What I would say definitively is that the Bible does clearly say that. When we're talking about Christianity being queer accepting or okay with LGBTQ plus folks, we have to recognize that whether Christianity or Jesus or whoever you are choosing to identify as falling under that Christian label, that the Bible does specifically say in multiple places, Old Testament, New, etc., that it's not acceptable for men to have sex with men or for women to have sex with women. And so I think that's an important distinction to just throw out there, but I do want to let you continue.
Well, so I guess if I had a question, my question would be something to the effect of, since you guys have a show about secularism and sexuality, mm-hmm. how can someone from like my side who is LGBT but also identifies as a Christian mm-hmm. Kind of almost, I guess, bridge the gap to say that, there are people like me out there who want you to be able to be sex positive, to be able to, do what it is that makes you feel good and happy and safe. Because one of the things that I think I notice the most is that I get bashed on, for not only being transsexual, but for being a member of, the kink community at large, going to FetLife parties in my local area. And on the reverse, my kind of, like the kind of people that I know in my life kind of turn around and bash anybody who does that isn't Christian. So I'm curious if you think there's like a way to bridge the gap almost.
That's a really good question. I have many, many Christian friends who are in the same position that you are. One of my friends is, she's married to her wife, and they are both Methodist ministers right now. They just got ordained. They're so excited, and they're very visible. And I think, well, first of all, calling into a show like this is extremely helpful, and we love hearing these different perspectives, especially from, our friends who are Christian and also, sex positive. I think a lot of it has to do with if you feel safe enough to be visible to your community, please do. If you don't feel safe, if this is not a time or a place where you feel like you can come out and be 100% who you are, then that takes precedence, of course. But if your question is, how do I show that we exist? I would say the best way to do that is to exist safely, but also proudly and also loudly.
And I do have a suggestion, and I touched on it a little bit, but at Forbidden Fruit, we have all genders, all races, people who are Christian, people who are atheist, people who are witches, everything. So there are definitely people that are Christian and kinky and sexual and trans and queer. Or are you familiar with FetLife? There are groups on FetLife about Christians who are trans or or kinky. There's a whole group.
I'm on FetLife.
Yeah, look it up.
That was like quite a bit.
Yeah, look it up. There are groups about it, and I know some people who are monogamous and kinky and go to church. So you have to do a little bit more digging, because I agree people might not feel safe. But on FetLife, you don't have to post a picture of yourself. Mm-mm. You can just go chat with people.
Something which I always like to mention to people, because I have a lot of friends in the kink community in Austin who are Christians and who are practicing and go to church all the time. And it's I pretty much have always been an atheist as long as I've really cared anything about religion. But it's that Christianity excels at creating a community, which I think that some people find that incredibly valuable. Mm-hmm. And I'm a firm believer in just respecting other people's beliefs. And if you can practice whatever belief that you have and feel proud of who you are and everything like that, then I think that that's all that's really important. I don't believe that any group has the ability to knock you down a peg, make you feel bad about who you are, unless you give that power to them. And I think that that's something that's really important. And it goes back to like what I said earlier with the previous caller, where it's just, where's the relevance to like your belief compared to mine? If you have your belief and you feel happy and proud of that belief, and that belief gives you that community, that comfort, that whatever you believe has that belief, then I'm proud that you have that belief, and then that belief gives you strength.
Yeah, when I read the Bible, and, there's lots of sex in the Bible, obviously, and I think one of the most beautiful examples of human sexuality is found in the Bible in the Song of Songs. And most people don't even know what that is. But it's a beautiful work of poetry about falling in love and getting married and things like that. What I've tried to somewhat explain to people that share my beliefs is that it appears to me, at least, that the Bible kind of expresses this idea that sexuality is supposed to be good. And when I say good, it's that if you have people engaging in sexual activity where there's no harm occurring, where it's consensual, then that is what we are meant to be engaging in. What I see the Bible telling me not to do is engage in acts where there is no consent, where it is harmful to someone emotionally, physically, psychologically, and that we're supposed to have those conversations with people prior to engaging in those acts.
I love that description, and I would love to live in a world where that was what the Bible said. But I guess I just have to step in again and point out that the Bible is full of places that include non-consensual sex, at least as we understand consent in a sophisticated modern era. And it also, when you're talking about it describing, healthy, good sex versus bad, destructive sex, it in many places refers to same-sex attraction or interactions as being that unhealthy, bad, negative thing. And so, again, I just have to point out that while everything you're saying sounds really lovely, it's not supported by the actual text that you're saying it came from.
I think that's just going to be one of those things where we would just have to agree to disagree on that.
It's only so many pages. I'm not going to badger you about it any further, but I'd encourage you to read those pages because everything I'm saying is pretty easily found. Yeah,
I know the arguments for and against. I guess generally speaking, what I'm more interested in is that I hold these beliefs. I was an atheist most of my life. I now hold my Christian beliefs. But my goal has always been to see, I've always looked at atheists, agnostics, which is pagans, basically anybody that's, doesn't hold to some kind of orthodox religion. It's kind of a gift to me, because you guys do good things without having to be told to do them. You're not worried about eternal damnation for your actions or things like that, where we're kind of worried about those things. And Christians talk a lot about sex in a very negative manner. And it's been difficult for me to kind of engage, especially in like a church setting, to kind of broach these topics of, hey, these people are good people and they're doing good things and we shouldn't be judging them. And so that's why I actually joined into the Atheist Community of Austin, was to try to kind of maybe bridge the gap a little bit. So I like I said, I kind of wanted to call in a little bit, just kind of say hello. I've enjoyed watching the show up to this point. I'm going to continue to watch.
Glad to hear it.
And that was really my main question, is just to maybe get some advice on, how I can better serve the atheist community as a Christian.
Well, I would suggest one last thing would be to perhaps schedule some kind of Bible study where you read the Song of Solomon to other Christians and maybe surprise them with that. Just introduce them to maybe a part of their text that they don't read as often.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great
Yeah, get some raised eyebrows on that one.
Yeah, I believe that to be true. In any case,
I appreciate you taking my call.
yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much,
we do
Kathleen.
appreciate you being part of the community and for just checking in with us.
You guys have a wonderful night.
Take care.
As well.
You too.
What's
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad to hear it from her. I'm glad to hear different perspectives and to just know that there are folks within the church that do have a respect for the decency of other people and wanting to be considerate towards that.
Right. I think it's so telling that the Bible can be used to justify any mindset. And it
Different
tells you the
perspective, sure,
only
yeah.
thing that anyone quoting the Bible or any other religious text really tells you is about that person. And Kathleen seems like an amazing person because of the way that the biblical interpretation is for them. But yeah, it's interesting because it's basically a blank canvas, and you can project whatever it is that you want onto it.
There are many versions.
Exactly.
It's been written and rewritten a lot of times.
Did you know that the King James Version, which is the one that most fundamentalists and evangelicals like, was written by a bisexual person?
That's a really interesting fact.
Yep, King James was bi. So not many people know that or excited to know that.
I always I think that the Bible is a great guide for like how you should treat people. Aspects of it are, aspects of it are not. At the same time, like if someone comes to you and starts gay bashing because like the Bible says blank, I'll bet you money that they eat bacon. Like
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You take from it what you want, and if you want to use it as an object to beat people, you're going to grab anything in your reach to do that because that's just the type of person that you are.
It's just like your paddles. It's an instrument, and you can choose to either, bring it to the table in love or break a rib by accident.
People actually have made paddles out of Bibles and use it ironically or unironically.
See, that I would buy.
Yeah, I'll
Depending on
definitely
their-
take one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Start work on that.
May need to mention that in the workshop. That actually sounds like a pretty good time.
I'll see if my friend can bring his that he made. Sometimes it devolves into kinky show and tell. So if anyone watching this does come to our workshop next week and you made something neat that you feel safe to bring out into public, maybe someone hasn't used it yet, or it's in a Ziploc baggie, please come show us.
Wrapped in plastic, but bring it
Yes.
from home.
Please, please think about that. Did you want to get into the flogger?
Yeah, let me grab one more call,
Okay.
and then I'd love to see your flogger. Yeah, that's a sentence I just said. I like it. I stand by that. Okay, this is the career path I've chosen. Sorry, Mom.